All right, now we're going to be taking a look at JSX, what I would call a syntax language inside React. Now, React has a lot of parts, so sometimes it's just better to start in the middle and then work your way out. So this is where we'll begin. So what do I mean by syntax language? Well, it's not a scripting language. You can't do math with JSX. There's no expressions. It's basically a markup language. So when I say syntax language, just don't be afraid that you're going to have to learn all new things. It's very familiar and very easy to learn, and we're going to do some examples, and you'll see. So what the hell is JSX? Well, JSX is like this mutant baby of XML and JavaScript. Now, the single-page application made the web have so much more content, and that meant that it was time to modularize our HTML. We had to break our HTML into little pieces so that we could just kind of find a way out of the extreme complexity of multi-page, single-page applications. And we also wanted to put our HTML into JavaScript because we're going to be dynamically changing a lot of our HTML. And so JSX is going to be a lot like HTML because it hopes to accomplish the same purpose. You're going to be able to recognize divs and paragraph elements and H1s and stuff that you know. But the two parents of JSX, XML and JavaScript, you certainly know what JavaScript is, but what the hell is XML? Well, we should start by asking, why isn't HTML good enough? And it really has to do with the differences between XML and HTML. Maybe it's your first time hearing the phrase XML, but it means extensible markup language, as you can see. Now, I can't say for sure why React made the decision to use one over the other, but I can take a stab at why. Now, XML was developed to describe data. No tags are predefined. That is to say, you can't use the style or the class attribute to hook in CSS, to hook CSS onto your HTML elements. This means that every tag in XML is arbitrary and created by you. That means it can mean anything you want it to mean, and it can hold any data you want. I could put a tag, I could put an attribute on my H1 element called potato, and then I could make that equal to a function. It could be whatever you want, right? It's totally arbitrary, so flexible, right? Excuse me. Now, what on earth does extensible mean? Well, extensible is a tough sounding word, but it just means that XML is designed so that users and developers can add or expand its capabilities. It just means it's flexible. So I would say that React chose this syntax language as inspiration for JSX because JSX needs to be more flexible and driven by data over presentation. So we're just going to jump on into some examples, and hopefully you can see everything all right here. Now, there are some things going on in this editor here. You see React, you see React DOM, you see import statements. Try not to look at those things right now. What you should really be looking at is this thing right here in between these comments. Now, this looks like HTML. You have an H1, right? But we're just using it as it were out in the open in JavaScript. We're in an index.js file right now, and here we are just using JavaScript, or using HTML in our JavaScript. And this would obviously throw an error because this isn't a data type in JavaScript. JavaScript only has, what, strings, null, undefined, numbers, symbols, and some other stuff. It doesn't have this. The best way you can do this with jQuery is to slap this thing inside a string. But then if you do that, you have to do all of your HTML on one line. And that is a perilous hell to be trapped in. It's like Dante's Inferno. Okay, so this is HTML, but really what you're looking at right now is JSX. This line right here is JSX. And what's going on is we have this function we have this library called react_DOM. This library has a function called render. All render does is takes a JSX element and then puts it onto the HTML. Let's take a look at our index.html. Doesn't look too complicated, right? When you're doing React, you're going to have a div that has ID of app. Sometimes you'll see this written ID of root. That's just fine. Let it be whatever you want it to be. Again, it could be potato, it could be lemon, it could be whatever you want, right? No problem. So you're just getting that ID from the document, and you're just slapping this JSX, sorry, it looks so much like HTML you wouldn't even know, this JSX into your document, right? But JSX has some huge improvements over our friend HTML. So you can see this looks very familiar. Now, there's a couple things to note, and we're just going to go over them very quickly. If there is a word in JavaScript which is already taken, for example, class is a special word in JavaScript that's already used, so we can't throw that in here. So XML has to use class name. And in the case of, we're just going to say pretty title. And in the case of almost all classes, you can use almost all the classes that you know from HTML in your H1, except if they are multiple words, then it's going to be camel case. So there's a tag on inputs called HTML4. It just becomes HTML4 with a capital F. Not too tough, okay? So you can see that this class name behaves exactly like a class. We've got a CSS file here. What was it called? Pretty title. And we're just going to say color as, what's a good color? Blue. And hopefully it'll change. Yep, there we go. So you can see we've got the hello world on our corn silk background with blue. We're going to change that. I wonder if they have gray built in. I think, yeah, that's good. Okay. So you can see how it can use things pretty much the same as HTML. The huge benefit is that we can start putting JavaScript inside of our JSX. Okay, so let's just turn back the time here, and we'll get rid of our class name because we just don't need it cluttering things. And instead of hello world, say I wanted to dynamically put something in here. Hello name. And you see how I used curly brackets here? Curly brackets is how you tell JSX to go look for a variable, right? It's telling, not just go look for a variable, but you're telling JSX there's going to be some JavaScript in here. There's going to be a JavaScript expression. There's going to be some code to run. So if we save this right now, I'm pretty sure we'll get an error. Oh no, it'll just say hello. Let's check our inspector. Looks like we don't get an error at all. So basically, that's kind of surprising to me because in JavaScript, if we just console.log name, it would give us an error. But anyway, what I'm trying to show you still holds. var name equals Michael. And we save, and we see hello Michael. That's because what happened inside of these brackets here, the curly brackets, is it ran JavaScript. So now we can dynamically input stuff into our JSX very easily. And let me show you the other huge benefit of JSX, which is multi-line. Ooh, don't we love multi-line, folks? We love our multi-line. There's a div. Let's just, we'll just add a paragraph element on there, and it'll just be hello. So now you can see you can do multi-line. It's totally fine. You cannot do that in jQuery, right? Huge benefit, life-changing benefit there already. So, but say we want to take our JavaScript one step further here. Say just putting an expression in there isn't enough for us. Let's turn it up a notch and let's just write a function. Let's write something get greeting, it's going to take in a name, and if we have a name, we're going to return a JSX of hello name, all right? And if we don't have a name, we're going to return a JSX of hello world, all right? Don't have to use quotes. We don't have to use quotes. We just type HTML. It's so good, okay? Now, how do you think we get it in here? We want to run it, so we're going to put it inside these curly brackets. And then let's just do get greeting and call it. And we'll call it with no parameter first to see if it says hello world. And it didn't do anything. How interesting is that? Let's figure out why. Let's find out why. There's an error. Ah, it's because I forgot our comma. So maybe we'll be okay now. There's still some syntax errors. There we go. Since we are using this function, since we're using this function to return JSX, we can just call it directly here. Because what the first parameter of render expects is a JSX argument. So you see, when we call this function, what we're getting is that. And so that's totally fine. We don't need to wrap it in curly braces. And say we wanted to get a name in here, so we could just say hello Chance. Oops, and we'll exit out instead of saving. And you can see it updates to hello Chance, and that's because it ran this function with a new name. It ran it here, and then it returned hello name. But say we wanted to take it maybe even a step further. Say we wanted to do some different sort of thing. We'll just do one example with some looping, all right? So let's just make a list. Var list equals, we'll make an array of things. So it's just gonna be eggs, flour, and possibly your soul. Okay, because that's, yeah. We want an unordered list, and we want to make list elements out of each one of these items in our list. So the way we're going to do that is using map, which is a JavaScript function on the array object. Now map takes an item, so we'll just say list item, and it's going to be, well, we don't have to do that. We can do function list item, and list item is going to return, it's going to return a li with list item. And something special about JSX to note here, now the map function also provides an index as the second parameter to the callback. So you have, okay, so what's happening here is you've got list, which is this variable, and JavaScript is going to map over it. That means go through each element in here. It's going to give you the element and the index, its position. And then for each element, you're going to return an li with a list item as the information in here. And because it's JSX, we've got to use the curly braces in there, just like we're using the curly braces right here around our map statement. And the key is a special thing that just keeps the order of elements. So we're just going to map it with index plus item. So that way it says something, yeah, that way the key is a little bit descriptive. So you're going to get something like 0 item, 1 item, and 2 item as the key. The important thing to note is that when you map, when you create identical objects, React needs a way to keep track of them, and it does that using the key. So let's save and see what happens. All right, so it just mapped, and you can see we're dynamically creating data here. And maybe we don't need your soul in our special thing, and maybe we just need like 1,000 pounds of bacon. That sounds fine. And there it is, 1,000 pounds of bacon. So that way we'll be able to dynamically render in any source. And that's JSX for you.